On June 17, 2021, the United States gained its first new federal holiday since 1983. That moment belonged, in large part, to Opal Lee. At 89 years old, she began walking 2.5-mile segments across the country to rally support for a national Juneteenth observance, eventually gathering 1.6 million signatures. Almost immediately, corporations tried to package the holiday. Juneteenth-branded Celebration Edition ice cream hit store shelves, complete with trademark symbols. A children's museum offered a Juneteenth watermelon salad. Both sparked intense backlash and were quickly pulled. By 2025, that initial wave of corporate enthusiasm reversed. Major sponsors like Amazon and Verizon withdrew funding from long-standing community festivals. Political figures pushed back, with Donald Trump declining to issue a Juneteenth proclamation, and his administration removing the day from the National Park Service's fee-free calendar. Juneteenth resists being a sanitized, purely joyful commercial holiday. To understand its true nature requires looking at the triumph of survival alongside the reality of a freedom that remained highly conditional. This map shows the movement of enslavers across the American South toward the end of the Civil War. A persistent myth says enslaved people in Texas didn't know they were free because the news traveled slowly. The reality is that Texas was geographically remote and largely untouched by Union troops. As the Union Army advanced in the east, planters from states like Louisiana and Mississippi moved their operations west to Texas to keep their human property in bondage, forcibly migrating more than 150,000 enslaved people. Slaveholders in Texas read the newspapers. They knew about the Emancipation Proclamation. They simply ignored it until they were forced to comply. That enforcement arrived on June 19, 1865, when Union Major General Gordon Granger landed in Galveston with 2,000 federal troops. Granger's staff posted General Order No. 3 around the city. Its opening sentence is direct: "All slaves are free," outlining absolute equality. But the second half instructed the newly freed to remain quietly at their present homes and work for wages, warning they would not be supported in idleness. The federal government delivered a single document promising absolute equality, while simultaneously demanding that Black Americans stay put and continue laboring for the people who had owned them hours earlier. The infrastructure to protect these new citizens did not exist. For the 250,000 enslaved people in Texas, the initial reaction was pure, indescribable joy. Decades later, formerly enslaved Felix Haywood recalled the day feeling like everyone was walking on golden clouds, saying they all felt like heroes. But that joy was met with severe retaliation. Some enslavers kept the news hidden until one final harvest was brought in. Others reacted with lethal force. Testimonies detail freed people being hunted down and lynched simply for trying to claim the freedom they had just been granted. The end of the Civil War brought peace to the nation, but it brought extreme violence to Texas. A legal document proclaimed freedom in an afternoon, but securing that freedom required years of survival. The very next year, freed people in Texas organized the first anniversaries of that June 19th order, initially calling it Jubilee Day. Because segregation laws barred Black people from using public parks, a group of formerly enslaved community leaders in Houston pooled their money in 1872 to buy 10 acres of their own land. They named it Emancipation Park. The early celebrations established traditions that carry on today, particularly the use of vibrant red foods and drinks. Items like red velvet cake, barbecue, and hibiscus tea evolved from West African traditions, where the color red represented power, sacrifice, and the blood of their ancestors. This map shows the routes of the Great Migration. As Southern states rewrote their constitutions to strip Black Americans of their voting rights, millions moved north and west for industrial jobs. They brought Juneteenth with them, but many northern employers refused to grant the day off. Combined with the crushing pressure of the Great Depression, the public holiday faded into small private gatherings. The turning point arrived in 1968. Following Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination, organizers deliberately scheduled the climax of the Poor People's Campaign, Solidarity Day, on June 19th. For many thousands of attendees at the Lincoln Memorial, it was their first exposure to Juneteenth. They took the tradition back to their home states. The federal government didn't keep Juneteenth alive. It survived for more than a century, strictly because local communities acted as its unpermitted caretakers, protecting their history from institutional erasure. That long grassroots effort finally met overwhelming political momentum in the summer of 2020. The historic racial justice protests across the country forced lawmakers to formally acknowledge the day. The modern Juneteenth flag reflects this exact fight for belonging. It deliberately uses the red, white, and blue of the American flag, asserting that descendants of the enslaved have always been fully American. This map shows the current landscape of state recognition. While the federal government elevated Juneteenth, only about 30 states actually observe it as a permanent paid legal holiday. In the rest, it remains a ceremonial observance, meaning state employees still have to clock in and work. If you want to engage with the holiday authentically, look at how it was built. Instead of buying branded merchandise, read first-hand accounts of emancipation and mirror the strategy of the people who bought Emancipation Park by directly funding Black-owned businesses and community-led festivals. Juneteenth cannot be packaged or marketed. It's an anniversary that requires us to celebrate the staggering resilience it took to survive, while acknowledging the ongoing work required to make absolute equality a reality.